Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to this edition of Meetings of Minds on this July day when I'm sure everybody is busy. You've probably got a lot of stuff going on personally, certainly professionally, embracing the summer months. So we really do appreciate you taking time out to join us today for what I promise will be a fascinating session. As someone who's been in and around sports performance my entire life, really, and certainly for the majority of my career, I know the importance of key players. So for in a game of rugby, we want a really strong fly half. We want a key performance prop. In football, we want that centre mid. We want that person up front who can score you goals and make a difference to the outcome of the game. And that's what Emily is for us here at Zinzino. Emily joined Zinzino not long after myself and immediately came in as a class act and key player, a person who makes the difference. And she is our Omega specialist. So all of us within the research team refer back to Emily when we're really pursuing and hunting down factors relating to the Omegas. She is our go-to game-winning person. But today, she's going to land on a topic that couldn't be any more timely. You know, there's a lot of research that has gone on in this area just recently, and quite rightly so. And as such, there's a lot of kind of conversation and miscommunication because it's such a ripe area and a vital area of research interest when it comes to the impact of those omegas, and particularly those omega-3s. And what Emily is about to talk us through is the role the essential fatty acids play in motherhood, all the way from pregnancy to early infancy. And so, without further ado, I would like to welcome in and hand over the reins to Emily.
Okay, thank you for that introduction, Colin. I have a PhD in food and nutrition, and I love, my special interest is in such essential fatty acids. So this is with great pleasure I've been starting working at this firm, and I love knowledge about the role of essential fatty acids during all stages across life. And motherhood is one of those periods of life where the essential fatty acids play a extra special role and an important role. And so that is why I've chosen this topic. And I have also chosen to focus a bit more on the health of the mother. We know that these fatty acids, omega-3 and omega-6, are important for the child as well. But this area is so huge. So we have to take the information about the child health and the potential risks or benefits with the mother's levels of omega-3. We take that in our next session. You have to invite me back for that. So I would like to start with just go through the essential fatty acid, what it is. And as many of you already know, there are two families of the essential fatty acids, the omega-3 family and the omega-6 family. And the ones that we are going to focus on today is the omega-3 fatty acids EPA and the other omega-3 fatty acids DHA. And these are the marine fatty acids. We can get them from fish or from algae. And we have also, from the other side, we have the omega-6 arachidonic acid, or AA, that I'm going to mention. And very simplified, we say that arachidonic acid is more related to inflammation. It has these pro-inflammation properties. And although inflammation is really good and important, we need to have balance between this player and the other omega-3 on the other side here, EPA, to balance off our immune responses or inflammatory responses. And then we have DHA. And both of them have many different properties, but one thing that we're going to focus on today is the building block, the capacity of DHA to be a building block, especially in the brain of the mother and the fetus and the baby. So let's continue. Here I would like to show you the pathways that these fatty acids, DHA and EPA, take. So when we eat, these fatty acids will come through the digestive system and end up in our blood. And here they can circulate around our most important organs and donate or be absorbed into those, but also to our reserves, our fat stores, and other tissues. And for example, it's in the blood that goes through our bones and our bone marrow is also where the new red blood cells are being born. And if you have a lot of DHA and EPA in the bone marrow, you will get red blood cells with more omega-3s in their membrane. So this is the route for the EPA and DHA. And the known benefits, we have, as you know, the Food Safety Authority, EFSA, and they have this approved health claim. So we know that DHA and EPA have the beneficial contribution of normal function of the heart, the normal blood pressure, normal blood triglyceride levels, and the DHA contributes to normal brain function, normal vision, and then we have these two regarding maternal nutrition. So the European Food Safety Authority stressed that DHA contributes to the normal brain development of the fetus and normal development of the eyes of the fetus. And to obtain these beneficial effects, you need to consume, according to European Food Safety Authority, 200 milligram DHA in addition to the general recommendation of 250 milligram. All right. I will try to talk a little slower because I know this is being live translated. Yes, and before I start, I also want to make you aware of that the focus are going to be largely on DHA when we talk about pregnancy and lactation and health during this period. And also, this is a common picture that you will see if you, for example, Google essential fatty acids and motherhood. It starts with pregnancy and then stresses during the lactation period and the infancy. And that the beneficial effects are the mental development and visual development. And what I think is missing in this picture is that beneficial things can happen before pregnancy. It isn't only DHA that is involved in the positive aspects in pregnancy. And it should also be more focused on the mother and not only the baby, although that is very important. But the mother's health is really important also. So don't forget EPA now when I continue this presentation. So before pregnancy, could there be anything important with starting and having a good balance, a sufficient balance or sufficient amount of omega-3 within your body before trying to become pregnant? And there's no studies that have studied this directly, cause-effect relationship, but there are a lot of studies that study conditions that we know affect, for example, fertility. So EPA and DHA have been related to the condition of endometriosis, for example, and that is a condition that will impact a woman's fertility. And that's a painful condition that affects many women. And we also know that amongst the infertile women, about 25 to 40% of them have an endometriosis. So it's not unimportant to know that EPA is related, and that, for example, in this study, they saw that the ones having higher levels of EPA were 82% less likely to have this endometriosis condition. And we have also other studies related to, for example, our reproductive hormones, and also this last study is actually very interesting. I'm going to read it again and again, because they are using a supplement of fish oil, olive oil, and vitamin D, and that is also something that we believe in and use here at Zinzino. And they saw an improved composition of human follicular fluid, and believe they have the idea that this could be important for the human egg development, and also development and success of pregnancy following in vitro fertilization. So here was just example of some of the issues that being considered or researched that might be important for women and families trying to become pregnant. And now we're going to talk about the most obvious, perhaps I can say, that the DHA is necessary during pregnancy because of the baby's growing brain. And the mother is the baby's only source of nutrition. And so it's a big demand on the pregnant and nursing woman to supply the baby with DHA. Because DHA, we have a lot of DHA in our brain, and within the first trimester, the fetal brain begins to develop. And during the second trimester, there is an acceleration of fetal brain growth. And by the third trimester, it is a rapid accumulation of DHA in the brain. So that is why I want to show you how the babies get this DHA, because I hope you understand how important it is for the baby's brain development to have this steady supply of DHA. And of course, one of the main supply for the baby is by the mother's dietary intake from the things she's eating from day to day. So these DHA molecules will be available for the baby. But since the baby is growing 24/7, not only in relation to the mother's meals, it would be very unpractical if this was the main source for the baby. So there is actually a very smart thing, an evolutionary thing built into the placenta and to the placenta and the signal. So the baby can signal to the woman's body to release her own source of DHA. And it is DHA and actually AA, the omega-6 fatty acids, that are the most important for the baby brain's development. So these two are preferentially chosen before any other fatty acids. So the baby can regulate its own supply, so there is a steady supply to the baby. And also, now I see I forgot to talk about that in the first picture, that we also have these synthesized, that the body can synthesize a small portion of DHA. And this conversion rate from the mother omega-3 fatty acids, or for the parent omega-3 fatty acids. Now I'm talking about the family of essential fatty acids, and the parent alpha-linoleic acids can become DHA, and this conversion will increase a bit during pregnancy. So we have 3 supplies of DHA to the baby. And since the baby can signal to the mother's own supply to release its, or the mother's own stores and reserves to be released into the mother's blood, we actually are going to see this increase in blood plasma. So the DHA will increase during the pregnancy in the mother's blood plasma, and that is because of all of the released DHA in the blood. But if we look at the mother's red blood cells, where we can get a picture of her own supply store or reserves, this will show that they are declining. These levels are declining. And I would also like to talk a little bit about the EPA and what some studies believe is the role of EPA, because it sounds to me a little strange that the DHA would be the only important fatty acids during pregnancy, because in nature we have DHA and EPA most often together in about the same, or EPA is actually often more than DHA in many natural foods that we eat. So I don't believe that there's an extra need of only DHA. And also this is the beliefs of research that have looked at this. This is the placenta wall, and this is the side of the mother, and this is the side of the baby. And between these two sides, there will be different kind of transporters. And these are the transporters that select DHA to be transported in front of before any other fatty acids. And it is believed that EPA may be involved in mediating this concentration and this transportation, and that EPA is the one that upregulates the number of these transporters. Because in some studies they have seen that the correlation between the numbers and of these gene expression, and also for the number of these transporters, is correlated with the level of EPA and not DHA. So some studies believe that pregnant women who just take DHA supplement without any dietary EPA may limit the transport and uptake of DHA into fetal cells. And after pregnancy. So you have gotten a picture of that the DHA may decrease by as much as 50% in some individuals after one single pregnancy, and that studies have shown that some of these individuals not are replenished again. It takes up to 26 weeks. And this is from a Danish study where they had the baseline whole blood levels of 4.9, both group, a placebo group and an omega-3 intervention group. And the ones who took placebo had the lower whole blood values, because this is the natural the baby who are taking so much of the stores. But if they supplemented, and this was with 2.4 grams, they had higher levels after pregnancy. But it is this group that I'm interested in, the low levels and the consequence, and that people need to be aware about. The women who had gone through an pregnancy haven't been taken away her own stores of DHA, and we know from the list of health beneficial aspects of DHA and APA that it is very important for us adults as well. So what will happen when you're in a state with very low values after the delivery? And what will happen is that there also is breastfeeding after a pregnancy, and the breastfeeding is incredibly important also for the baby's development, because the baby's brain are going to double in size during the first 18 weeks. So the supply of DHA does not decrease, or the demand for DHA from the baby. And here we can see that there is a strong correlation between the intake, and in this case, it was 900 milligrams of DHA, and the level of maternal red blood cells. And there were also correlation between the breast milk concentration and the infant red blood cells, and also the strong correlation between the mother's red blood cell value and the infant red blood cell value. So if the mother had 8% level, also the baby had 8% level. But then other aspects regarding this group that I showed you with low level, and that's been really studied, and there have been some major studies released in these past years. So there have been several meta-analyses and large RCT studies that consistently show that there is an increased risk for early preterm birth in women with low omega-3 fatty acid blood levels. But now we're not talking about in the end, after delivery. We're talking about in the beginning, and that perhaps the protection that omega-3 fatty acids might give you for early preterm birth might start perhaps before pregnancy, and that it is the build-up of the stores or reserves in the mother. And these studies have been there's so many that confirms this now, so that have changed the view of if you perhaps should increase the recommendation. And I just wanted to show you this article the news when they found in a study that they tested out the recommended level of 200 milligrams. If you remember in the beginning, I told you about the European Food Safety Authority recommended 200 milligram dose of DHA. So in this study, they had one group that had 200 milligrams and another group that had the higher 1,000 milligrams of DHA in their diet and started during their pregnancy. And they saw that the woman taking the 1,000 milligram of DHA daily had lower rate of early premature birth than women who took the standard 200 milligram dose. But back to the group that have very low status also after the delivery. And there is also a growing body of clinical and epidemiological evidence that suggests that low dietary intake and or tissue levels of DHA is associated with postpartum depression. And that the physiological demands of pregnancy and lactation put childbearing women at particular risk of experiencing loss of DHA from tissue, including the brain. And this is an incredibly interesting area. And I'm not going to go into in detail about the different studies because it's difficult to study the human brain. So there's no studies relating to the pregnant woman brain, except that they have seen how the brain can decrease in size through different kind of methods. We have another study where they could measure the symptoms, the perceived symptoms of postpartum depression. And by increasing plasma DHA by 1%, that decreased the symptoms by 59%. So the relation between DHA and depression is, there is association, and that there are many that want to have this recommendation increased and also get this information out there. Because the existing recommendation today and generally around the world are around these 200 milligrams of DHA daily, in addition to the general adult requirements. But we also have this most recent Cochrane review suggesting that an optimal dose of DHA supplementation for women with low DHA intake and low DHA status is likely to be between 500 till 1,000 milligram. And there have also been suggestions about the level that at least 500, no, I'm sorry, at least 5% in red blood cells regarding DHA, that is a suggested target. And that is after having reviewed all of different research where they have seen when does women benefit from in which level of the blood does these changes or beneficial effects occur. And so they, in this study, they agreed that most point to the 5% red blood cells level. And of course, I also want to talk a little bit about our products that I'm very proud of, very proud to present. And in our balance oil, where we have the fish oil, the natural ratio of DHA and EPA, it has not been compromised in any way. It's the ratio that you actually also have in the fish. And it is in natural triglycerides that also is more easily absorbed of the body. And here we have the DHA within levels that is sufficient for a pregnant woman according to these results. But if you want to have, if you're advising someone that want to have the higher levels of DHA, we also have the vegan version, which have higher levels of DHA than EPA. But most importantly, maybe it's more important to test and actually see what kind of dose, what kind of oil that would fit each individual person. So my take-home message from this presentation, and that I hope I have given you, is that there is a general lack of awareness of the potential benefits of both EPA and DHA supplementation in women before and during pregnancy. So both EPA, DHA for the woman's health and also before pregnancy. And that 200 milligrams of the recommended daily intake of DHA might be too low. And that screening for EPA, and DHA concentrations before, during, and after pregnancy should be the standard form of monitoring women, not only for the child's well-being and further development and for having a full-term birth or pregnancy, but also for example, depressive-related things, and to have the energy to be able to cope with the life after having a baby. So information, resources, and support needs to be enhanced. And for that, I'm actually going to send you one last advice, and that's if someone out there are working with the more nutritional recommendation and help with the nutritional plan, I strongly advise you to have a postpartum nutrition plan where you can plan these type of meals and how you can get this food into your body after having a baby, because that's not so easy to plan after you had the baby. It's so have a nutrition plan before the due date. And now I'm ready for your questions.
Superb. Thank you very much, Emily. That was fascinating. That genuinely fascinating. There's a few questions that have come through, and and anybody who'd like to drop a question in now, feel free, and I will try and pick them up so that I can read through and we won't duplicate. And some of the questions that have come through, particularly with regards, excuse me, to that notion of depression, postpartum depression. I think you've already covered that, but there are a few things, if you don't mind, Emily, that I'd like to, whilst we've got your attention, to kind of delve a little more deeply into. And one of them is a question that just came through, which is relates very specifically to balance oil, but let's take this broader. If a person is pregnant, should they increase how much balance oil they take based on their increase in weight? And I guess outside of that, is that the same from a dietary point of view? Would you say that you would look to increase as your weight changes over the course of the pregnancy?
Yes, absolutely. So the weight is an excellent way of seeing your need, but you should also have the test to confirm that. So, and I like this suggested target value, because if you have this target value to always try to achieve, then you have something, to evaluate your dose against. Yeah.
There's more questions coming through off the back of that now, which I thought would happen. So bear with me. someone would like to know specifically, understand more about balance oil during IVF, and whether or not, there are any implications with regards to any studies that you're aware of with regards to IVF treatment and somebody's kind of, uptake of DHA, use of the omegas.
Yeah, and that was, I had one of those studies on the presentation on the before pregnancy part, where I found this. I just found that study a couple of days ago, so I'm going to read it one more time. But in that study, it was regarding IVF, and they had they supplemented with omega-3 that together with olive oil and vitamin D. So very much like our balance oil, they tried on this group of people, and they actually saw that the composition of the follicular fluid improved. They had got a higher incorporation of omega-3s. In the same way that they have seen that healthy people with a healthy lifestyle and healthy diet, they also have these kind of concentrations within their follicular fluid, and they know that the healthy living people have higher. They have more success with getting pregnant, but they have not yet been able to. It was beyond the scope of this study to see if this improved follicular fluid composition actually would lead to the success. So this is so far just implication or theories that they believe really strongly in.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying. I know people get frustrated by us from the science community when we're reluctant to say this is that, but essentially there's some interesting and convincing research, and we just need more critical mass around that. But that is fascinating and fits in with the broader picture of what we're seeing with regard to the impact of DHA. I'm going to take this just a slightly different direction, but on the same topic. And are you aware of any information, any research with regards to miscarriage, and whether or not there's been any correlation between a lack of or a deficiency in DHA and EPA and a connection with regards to miscarriage? I don't want to speculate too much in this area because this is a sensitive area, but we know that miscarriage have some relation to inflammation in the body and inflammation responses. So that's as far as I want to go on that question. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I knew it was a sensitive area to go into, but I appreciate you kind of responding to that. On a different note, let's just slightly take a different. I find this question interesting. I've probably got my own thoughts on this, but I'd be interested to hear yours first. As DHA is higher in the vegan balance oil, is it good to take vegan before going to sleep? Is it better for the brain cells?
Oh, okay. I don't know. No, I don't think that's an interesting question. But no, since the brain are going to be busy with the cleaning during the night, I don't believe that there will be some kind of extra incorporation of DHA during the nighttime.
I agree. I think as someone with a chronobiological background and has done a lot of research around sleep, I don't think there's any convincing evidence that there would be any beneficial effect to that type of time and of it. I picked up a question earlier on that was on a similar notion though, was that because, and you made reference to this, because of the higher content of the DHA in the vegan one, is this something that we would argue was better placed for somebody who is pregnant or intending to get pregnant, certainly later stages of pregnancy, the third trimester? or do you believe people should just stay on track with whichever version of the balanced soil they typically consume?
Yeah, I don't think there is something extra beneficial with taking away the EPA. I think it's important to ensure that you have the right amount of DHA, that you look to the label and see, does this have the right amounts of DHA? But if it's at the same time have the extra EPA, that's not a problem. And so if you have your dose according to your weight, and perhaps you have a very low weight, and you will see that your fish oil doesn't reach the suggested level, then increase the fish oil. You don't have to change to the vegan if you don't want to. But that's, yeah, as you wish, just see to come up to the recommended DHA level, and also take a blood test if you're unsure.
Great. On that note, somebody's asked a question about the test. Someone always does, which we're happy to answer, because the test is a huge part of what gives us our objectivity and eliminates us bias. So can you please explain the details of the test analysis? Where does the specialist investigate omega-3 concentration in the red blood cells, membrane, or where? Over to you, Emily.
Okay, I maybe didn't understand all of what you said, but perhaps I will answer that with my answer anyway, because we measure whole blood. So you have these, you have in the blood, you have the, I forgot the name, the fluid, you have the red blood cells, and you have the
plasma.
Plasma, thank you.
That's why we're a team, folks.
Yes,
we're here to help each other.
So some doctors measure the plasma, and that's an excellent measurement to see your, for example, your fatty acids during the day, what you have eaten during the day. But in the red blood cells, you will see what you have been consuming over a long period of time, because that will show your habitual intake of these fatty acids. And we measure both. So we have the whole blood that we measure. So we will get a picture of both the everyday, the daily, or so if you can actually, we have actually tried this at the office. If you take a test before you have had the oil or a meal, a fatty meal, an ordinary meal, and you take it every hour, I believe, during 6 hours, you will see small differences in your blood test. And I mean small differences. But if you have low values, you can actually see the small differences. But since it is also the red blood cells, we can see the levels according to those red blood cells and habitual intake. Was that an answer? No?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the answer. We get asked this a lot, don't we, about the test, and I appreciate that, because it is a huge part of what keeps us objective. But that's exactly right. 100%. I'm just going to pick up a question in here, which is about, because a few people have asked, can we have some professional literature? I think what you mean by that, Paul, is peer-reviewed research literature. So the ones that Emily has made reference to, I'm going to ask Emily, is it possible for us to share a reference list of things that have informed your presentation today? That might be something we can put out. A few other people have asked for the slides. We never share the slides, just to give a house rule. The slides that we prepare for our presentations, we don't share them. We don't give them to other people. There's lots of reasons why. The main one being is that this is really about how we choose to communicate the information that we want to share. And when that gets handed over, some of it can get lost in translation. So we never share our slides, but we do capture these recordings. So please feel free, once this recording is shared with people, to watch again, to make your own notes. That's a great way to kind of even take on more information. So here's one. We get asked a lot of this as well. When a woman takes too much EPA and DHA during the pregnancy, can it be harmful or dangerous for the fetus?
Yeah, and that's the same for everyone else. That 500 grams is the top. No, not 500. Sorry, 5 grams is the top level, the upper level that you shouldn't cross. But actually, up to that level, they haven't seen any. I have information about that on my PowerPoint as well, but I didn't know if you were interested in these things. But up to 5 grams, there has been no recording of being harmful for the baby or for the mother.
Great. There's a ton of stuff that I'm coming through. People are welcoming the idea of a recording and the reference list. Let me have a look here. What else we've got coming through? I'd like to ask a question, because this is something that concerned me personally, and hopefully this will resonate with other people. I spend a lot of time looking at factors that relate to cognitive performance. And we know that over the past 50 years, and this might sound quite sensational or deliberately provocative, but I don't mean to be. We know that over the past 50 years, average IQ in Western industrialized nations has gone down year on year. Average IQ, cognitive performance, intelligence performance markers have gone down. At the same time, we've seen this huge shift in our diet, and we're well aware of the fact that there are certain deficiencies around brain development, DHA, that play an important part in that development. This is just from your point of view and your opinion, do you think there's a correlation in those two factors, or are we just seeing, is one the product of a change of education rather than a change of physiological maturation of the brain, or do you think they're related?
I think there's a lot of reason why, but I definitely think that this is one of that this is influencing. Absolutely.
Right. I could, if I was the kind of person, I could press on that and we could explore that a little bit more. But I genuinely think that this is playing a huge part in what's going on. And interestingly, we've got a few friends and colleagues on here from Australia. They recently changed their medical advice with regards to DHA and are now, not just DHA, omega-3, and encouraging and, really proactive with this strategy for people who want to become pregnant and who are pregnant. What do you think, Emily? Are we going to see, is this going to be the start of the global rollout?
Yeah. Yes, good job, Australia. I'm so happy. I'm so proud. That's such a good development, and absolutely we're going to see change in the recommendation for pregnant women.
Superb. It always takes one, doesn't it? My experience tells me it only ever takes one to break fold and go forward, and then we start to see this change come about. Let me, if you don't mind, Emily, if I can just keep you captive for a couple more minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ask a few more, because there's so many questions. I really appreciate people throwing all these questions in. I'm doing my best to keep up.
Yes, and I'm so happy to hear the actual questions from one of you, so I know what you want to hear. So, give me your questions.
There's so many, Emily. There really is. It's always a task, that looking through questions, but this is, as I expected, this is such an important topic. The questions have really gone through the roof. So let me have a look. Should women decrease oil before their due date? We learn that, but the person doesn't agree. And that's an interesting point, because a lot of regulations do say, a lot of medical regulations currently will say that the later stage of pregnancy, that certainly the last 2 to 3 weeks, that the woman should reduce the omega-3 intake and the DHA. What do you think? Do you think that stacks up? Does the research support that notion?
No, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not allowed to give that advice. So you have to follow your doctor's advice regarding this. But since these up to 5 grams that they have been studying have not shown any difference, because it is they are scared about the bleeding, that it should be too much bleeding during the delivery, but there is no such connection when it's up to 5. And I don't know if they have studied with higher levels. I have not come across that. I have not looked into the even higher doses, what that could mean. But up to 5, there's no additional bleeding during delivery, and it's a safe. So no, I don't see why you should stop increasing. And one theory is that the mother's uterus need more AA. It gathers AA in the uterus because they need the strong inflammatory response and get all the muscles working during delivery. But I mean, EPA can also help in that, and that the uterus actually handle that. They have all, these smart kind of mechanisms that we have in our body. There is a mechanism for that as well. So I don't see any logical reason to why you should decrease before pregnancy, since it's so crucial for the mother to also have her stories. But just in the end of pregnancy, in the end, the 2 weeks, 3 weeks before delivery, the demand from the baby is just skyrocketing. It's so high. And so it's so much of the mother's own stores that the baby will demand from that. So if you stop, no, I don't see the reason why.
I think that ties into something else that was picked up earlier. Despite the fact that the global problem around nutrition centers on deficiency, it doesn't center on excess. And yet there are constantly these cautions put in place, whether it's vitamin D, vitamin C, omega-3. There's constantly this whole fear that's put in about having too much, when the problem is the exact inverse of that. The problem is global deficiency of these areas. And yet all the kind of fear mongering seems to be, don't take too much, and you're at risk of too much.
Yes.
And I find that fascinating, when actually it's a deficiency that we're dealing with.
Yeah, let me have a look. Spot on.
Let me have a look in this one, because there are even more questions. There's 2 areas for questions firing in, and I'm trying my best to make sure that I don't miss any. No, we've got all those ones. And let me have a look in here, because there's even more coming through. Is it possible to get a summary slide listing the benefits? As I've said, the recording of this will be shared. It will be put out there via the various means. So please, there is a little bit of a summary that Emily's already presented on that, and there's some key take-home notes that are on that. So please do watch again. I mean, personally speaking, when it comes to learning, and I've been through pretty much every kind of chapter of type of learning that you can imagine, my approach has always been to take notes, and if something was worth listening to or watching once, it's worth listening to or watching twice. So even for those people who've taken part today, please do watch through again. Particularly, there was so much information in what Emily has shared that, there's so much more to draw from it and to put into context for us. So let me have a look here. And what I'm going to do, Emily, I'm going to finish with one question, and I'm hand picking this one because we get asked this a lot. And because we get asked it a lot, I'm going to ask it now. So, can you please explain more about the olive oil and the polyphenols and omega-3, why this is the key? And then talk more about stabilized omega-3 is important. This is the golden $6 million question that we get asked a lot. So, Emily, I don't think I've ever heard you answer this one, Emily.
Okay.
So this is for me.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we know that in the fish, the omega-3s are stable. They are stabilized within the fish. And what happens when we have to clean the fish oil, refine the fish oil, is that we have to take away the aspects from the fish that kept these omega-3 stable. So that is, the name is phyllotannins, if I say it correctly in English. That have in the fish kept these omega-3s stable. But we have to take them away during refining, and to replace this, to keep them stable, every fish oil manufacturer have to have some kind of antioxidant. So it can be a synthetic antioxidant, or it can be the natural form of antioxidant. And the usual amongst the natural form is vitamin E, and or most usual is mixed tocopherols. And that is something that we also use because you need to have that as soon as possible when you have done the cleaning. But for most brands, they are happy with only those mixed tocopherols to stabilize the fatty acids. But we know that these just stabilize the fatty acids in the bottle. They stabilize fatty acids in the bottle, but we also need to have them stable within our bodies when we are eating the omega-3s. And that is not the case when you have only mixed tocopherols, for example, only the antioxidants that keep them stable. So the researchers behind this oil looked at what was it in the fish that kept omega-3s so stable in the fish. So the fish can eat each other and have the omega-3s stable. We can eat the fish and have the omega-3 stable. What it is it in fish that we are lacking in the fish oil? And they saw this fluorethanin and the composition and the mechanism that fluorethanin had in the fish. So they looked, what have we in our surrounding that can that have the same abilities? And this is where the polyphenols from the olive oil came into the picture. These have the same capability of binding the omega-3s. They have the same kind of antioxidant capacity, and they are amongst the strongest antioxidant capacity that we have in our plant source diet. So they chose the best source with the highest amount of these polyphenols, especially hydroxytyrosol, and tried that out in a test and saw that it had this amazing stability ability. So that's the story about why also more and more research add olive oil to their intervention group.
Emily, I think that is very typically you as the most clear and involved explanation of a process that I've heard. That's brilliant. I've made a few notes myself, so the next time I get asked, I'm going to pretty much replicate what you've just said.
Okay.
I think as we're on the hour now, I would like to, first of all, thank you, Emily. That was absolutely fascinating. What a hot topic. And I think you delivered that so well, and you provided such clarity. And the way in which you've gone through those questions and your responses, invaluable. So thank you very much. Secondly, I'd like to thank everybody who's taken time out in the middle of the summer to join us today for this Meetings of Mind. I'm sure you'll have found it really useful, valuable, and we'll return to it again. It's been superb. What a highlight. And we look forward to welcoming you all back next month when we have the main man, Thomas Gunderson from the VITAS Labs. So that last question, two questions ago with regards to the test and how the test is done, Thomas is the man. So you'll be able to listen to and speak to and ask questions to the man who works the magic behind the scenes. But until then, thanks again, Emily. Absolutely fantastic. Thanks to all of you. Have a great month. Have a good summer. Stay well. And we look forward to seeing you in August. Bye now.